an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering What We Do in the Shadows, Season 1, Episode 10. No, sorry, Episode 9, The Orgy. In this episode, the gang is hosting an orgy. I should have foreseen, based on their overall track record, how poorly this would definitely go. I did not, because I am but a babe in the woods. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Max for commissioning this episode and for his flexibility in letting me change the recording date for it. Appreciate you very much, Max. Hope you're enjoying the show. And guys, this episode was really something. This show, it is just so willing to be fucking bonkers. And I really wonder, like, the reaction that it gets from people who aren't quite ready for how hard it's going to go. Pun intended. Because, like, for me, as much as I could see on the outside that much of the subject matter in this episode is shocking, it is absolutely 100% not shocking to me. And I think sometimes that some of the humor might come from it being shocking. So while I found this episode funny, I felt like for me, it wasn't that funny a lot of the time because they were just actually setting up an orgy. And no, I have not been to an orgy. Confession. I wouldn't be averse to an orgy. But a lot of what they're doing, for me, I'm just like, well, yeah, that's just being a good host. You know, like, a lot, like, there's just a few different things that I'm like, okay, that's definitely ridiculous. And then there's a lot of it that I'm like, I mean, is that supposed to be a joke, or is that just them being excellent at their job? That's what they're there for, right? It feels just like that should be standard. I don't know. That said, what's going on with poor Guillermo? Guys, I really feel for this kid so much. I enjoy his character a lot. And I know that I've talked about before how part of me wants him to be like either made into a vampire or to at least finally hit the wall in terms of what he's willing to fucking take. I do like the going back and forth. And I won't be mad if he gets turned into one. But I wouldn't mind if we did it a little bit unexpectedly. And this episode, in terms of just the demands being placed on him, I feel like this was valuable because what we have seen of his duties as a familiar so far have been very sort of the circumstances of what he's asked to do might be kind of extreme. But the actual duties that he has had to perform, other than the one time that he was sent out to get virgins that other time, it's just, it hasn't been that ridiculous or extreme. It's just been a little bit sort of humiliating, right? And this episode, it's like not only humiliating, also ridiculous, also pretty extreme. And to the point where I'm genuinely like, yeah, I wouldn't do that. Look, Guillermo, maybe get out. You know, I'm just saying. So overall, I give this episode a B+. I think I've been at least at a B+ for every episode this season, though. So that's not a bad thing. And I'm going to start at the beginning because we start off with the house getting like sort of cleared in different places, the furniture being pushed out to the sides, and Guillermo has one of those giant rolls, like those basically like restaurant rolls of, what do you call it? This plastic wrap, saran wrap, and he's wrapping all of the furniture up in it. I feel like it would probably be easier to just throw tarps over everything, right? Just get a bunch of like, get those, what is it that they put down for paint? Drop cloths? Get a bunch of those. They're hella cheap. Because wrapping up all this furniture, first of all, A, time consuming, and you will almost definitely miss a spot. B, hella uncomfortable to fuck on. Like, if you've ever fucked bare-assed on, like, vinyl seats anywhere, you know. That shit chafes after a minute. It's not pretty. I can't imagine it's any better on saran wrap. Especially because if you're really going to be going for it, that shit's going to tear up, like, almost instantly. If you're doing your job right. So I just think drop cloths, they're more cost effective, probably. They are going to be more effective in general. And I think they probably look nicer because nobody wants to go into a room where everything looks like it's been shrink wrapped to be. It's like you just got your couch from, you know, Big Lots and they just sent it still and it's fucking, you know. And I really enjoy that Nadja is checking how strong the lamp hanging above the center of the room is, because apparently the expectation is that there's going to be some very acrobatic sex happening. And honestly, if you're a vampire, like, why not? All right, I'll get there. I will say that what I really, really liked about this, though, is how different everybody's attitude is about it. Because Nandor is just overall excited in, like, what honestly feels like a little kid way. I hesitate to say that when it's about an orgy. But truly, there is something almost innocent about his, like, looking forward to it. Then there is Laszlo, who talks about how it's this amazing experience that can literally last years. And then we go to Nadja, who says, "It's fine." I have never felt more kinship with her. That is the vibe of, first of all, how a woman would react a lot of the time to something that men think is super hot or sexually exciting. This is the kind of thing that, like, when men talk about having a threesome with two women, it's like, look, it's not even about being averse to another woman being there. It's that you aren't even quite up to one woman. And I don't mean that as like up to like a pun, like you can't keep it hard. I just mean making a woman orgasm isn't easy, and a lot of guys can't even do it. A lot of guys. Like, it's shocking, y'all. Shocking. One would hope vampires who have been around for hundreds of years would have gotten a handle on that, but there's no reason to think that. You know, there are men out there who have fucked hundreds of women, and they don't know what the fuck they're doing. There's no real reason to expect that a vampire would internalize the lesson any better than a regular fucking alive man. If anything, even less so, because they're going to have the advantage of being like a sexy vampire, and so they have to try even less. So these two dudes being bout it, while Nadja's kind of like, I mean, I guess, that feels 100% right to me. I am not certain that's exactly what is supposed to be our takeaway here, because part of me feels like what we're supposed to take away is that she is like maybe more experienced or more worldly than the two of them. I can't tell if that's what it is, but I definitely read it as like, yeah, of course the woman is kind of unimpressed. And this is borne out even more later on, because what happens is that Laszlo has recorded, ever since the inception of motion pictures, has recorded porn. And he comes at Nadja with recordings that he thinks are, as he puts it, truly erotic. And as she says, are really boring. Guys, there is nothing quite as infuriating as boring porn. And she's not wrong. Yo. It's pitiful. It's straight up pitiful. Oh my God. There is one where it's Seinfeld, and you hear like that bass, like burm, 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 and he comes in and talks about fucking pagers. Because each of the pornos is supposed to be like an example of that decade, you know? And I swear to God, if that isn't like, there is porn out there like that, guys. Have you ever watched porn where it's like amateur and somebody left the TV on in the background? That is the kind of shit that will really date something. Because half the time it's actual like TV. It's not, you know, if you leave television on in the background, it's rare that you've like pressed play on something on your DVD player or streaming service. It's usually people who just turn on the TV when they get home to have noise in the background. And that means that they have cable. So you get actual commercials. And like I said, want to date something? Listen to the commercials in the background. Oh my God, so distracting. I watched one the other day that there was a full episode of The Simpsons in the background. So distracting. So, like, I just completely did not even focus on the sex and kept being like, yeah, no, I remember this episode. And I don't even know The Simpsons that well. But it was like, whole thing. What are you doing? Just turn it off. Put some music on. Literally anything. Or upload it without sound. I don't know. But like, oh, bad idea. But Nadja, he thinks that he's like, I think that he's like getting her in the mood before the orgy starts. And it is 100,000% not working. She is genuinely like, oh God, I don't know how to say this to him, but this is like really bad. And eventually she does just say it. They're boring. And he is truly hurt by it. And basically acts like he just doesn't want to go to the orgy at all. Now, what I enjoy about this, personally, is the fact that he is so in love with Nadja. You know, they have had these like ridiculous sexual exploits, and they both have a ton of experience and are really like open freaks. But he cares about her so much. And I just keep being caught off guard by that. I keep expecting their relationship to like not really matter that much to one of them or the other of them. And I don't know why, because it's been like 200 years and they're still together. So obviously they fucking mean it. But I definitely expect this to like eventually fall apart. And it's not that I want it to fall apart. I don't at all. I really enjoy the two of them together. I enjoy the dynamic of this relationship in the household. And I just find it sort of touching and adorable that he is so, takes it so personally that she doesn't like it because he cares about her opinion a lot. And I find that really like endearing. I don't know. I feel like that's the kind of thing that's the truth. When you care about somebody and respect them, and Nadja is definitely somebody that I feel like commands respect, them not really being impressed with something that not only just something that you did, but something that you did that you are very proud of, which feels to me like the real issue here. That hurts. As much as you think that you're going to grow out of wanting approval, maybe to a degree, but you're always going to want the people that are closest to you, that you kind of look up to be proud of you. And I don't know, I just really enjoyed this little subplot. Of course, at the end of the episode, they wind up having makeup sex in bat form. And I cannot tell you guys how much I cackled at the expression on Nandor's face when he opens that door. When he closes it and looks at the camera, he's got this whole like grimace going on. That shit killed me. I love... Nandor is like... He's such a weird character because there are times where I'm kind of like, honestly, I like you the least. And I'll be honest, in truth, out of everybody, I do like Nandor the least. However, he is like the foundation of everything, you know? Also, I think part of why I like him the least is because of the fact that Guillermo is his familiar specifically. So every time Guillermo gets sort of mistreated, what it comes down to is that the buck stops with Nandor, and he's the one being incredibly inconsiderate and shitty, which we see in later on in the episode when he sits down to allegedly have a conversation about his feelings and clearly could not give fewer shits about the whole thing. But I think that's what I hold against him a little bit, is just the fact that I'm like, man, Nandor, you don't have to be like this, and you keep choosing to be like this. That said, I don't really have a good idea what, like, Nadja and Laszlo have no familiar, right? Because we had a familiar earlier in the season who got eaten. Then we had a cameraman who got eaten. But the familiar, yeah, there was a familiar who got eaten. Was that theirs? I guess they just didn't replace that one, right? I don't know why I'm worried about continuity in this. Because, like, literally, who cares? But it is the sort of thing that preys on my mind a little bit. I think about the fact that this episode starts with them, and Nandor says, our house was selected to host the, biannual vampire orgy. And I'm like, yeah, but you guys literally escaped from prison last episode. Are we not getting any fallout from that? Oh, who gives a shit, Natasha? Nobody. This show is not about a plot that continues from episode to episode. We don't need that. Internally, each episode makes total sense. That's all we need. I need to get over it. But it's very hard to turn that part of my brain off, considering what it is that I do. And also, biannual. Is that every other year? Because bi-weekly means every other week. Or does that mean twice a year? It feels like it... I feel like every time I've heard it before, it has meant twice a year. But when you stop and think about that, that really shouldn't be how that word goes. It's like inflammable and flammable. And the fact that they both mean the same thing, and that just doesn't... Why? Why have the two words at all then? What are we doing? Anyway, so Laszlo talking about how they originally tried to have it be triannual. And he says, which is bloody pointless because it takes me at least 6 months to recover from any orgy. And when he says that, Nadja says, yeah, it does. With a really deadpan look at the camera. Girl, I think she's a little bit pissy about it. It's something. I want to know what she's like. Oh, God. We know that she loves him. But I would love to just have a talk with her outside of the camera where the two of them are sitting next to each other, So Nandor is talking about how vampire sex is like pizza. Even when it's bad, it's good. It's designed to be enjoyed by 8 or more people. There's a choice of toppings. And in the morning, you're like, why do I have puncture wounds on my penis? That sex is like pizza, even when it's bad, it's pretty good. That is a quote that you hear get tossed around a lot. 100,000%. That was coined by a dude. Because any woman will tell you, bad sex can be absolutely fucking excruciating. That doesn't seem to be a problem for a lot of guys. That's not to say that guys don't occasionally have times when they can't come, because that'll happen, or can't get it up or whatever. But it's different. Like with women, it can be actively painful, first of all, or boring, or embarrassing, or you have to lie about how it's going because, like, you don't want to deal with the aftermath of telling a guy the truth and then having to deal with that fucking ego bruise. Like, I'll tell the truth, because honestly, I'm not going to sleep with a guy who can't take the criticism. But I 100% understand women who are having casual sex with guys that they're not that into being like, yeah, I'm not going to bother. I'm going to pretend I came and then I'm going to move on. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. And I probably did do some of that when I was casually dating myself. But anyway, so that moment, and I was just like, I really wonder if Nadja would agree with this. And we get some really amazing, one of the things that I love about this show is all the artwork that they like scroll between while people are talking. And sometimes it will have the characters' faces like superimposed into it. And sometimes it'll just be like, you know, some ancient Renaissance painting. And there are so many wild depictions of sex. And I am assuming a lot of them are meant to sort of be like hellish, but they're being portrayed as like just a good time, you know, for vampires. So when we come back from the credits, everybody is ordering Guillermo around. Nadja is asking basically for them to scotch guard the carpet. And Laszlo says, what you don't understand, we start talking about the stigma attached to throwing a poor orgy. I've known people who have committed suicide after a poor orgy. I wouldn't go that far. And Nadja says, I'd kill you though. And he nods and she says, and then I'd kill myself. There is no recovery from that humiliation. Guys, again, I should have seen it coming where we were going this episode. I don't know why I can't get it into my head that overall, these vampires are losers. I just can't, like, make that sink in. I think mostly because Nadja is so cool and genuinely cool. She's being dragged down, to be honest, by Nandor and Laszlo. She's choosing to be dragged down because she loves Laszlo. So, like, you know, to a point, that's just part of the deal. But I think that her coolness sort of elevates them to a point that doesn't seem like it should be possible. But it is working. Like, they should be thankful that she's even hanging out with him. And so I forget, due to the fact that she always seems to have it slightly more together, how actually incompetent they all are. Like, you know? And then you throw fucking Colin in that mix and, like, forget it. And then they start talking about the orgy of 1973. And I love it. She's like, I am not even going to speak his name. And Laszlo says, I don't give a fuck. His name was Mike. And then she just yells, fucking Mike. I can't get enough of vampires with just really ordinary names. It's like pets being named after people. Like, you know, just having a regular human name. Like, have you ever met somebody's dog and they're like, oh, that's Greg? It's just so hilarious. I don't know why it's so funny. Either that or animals that are named after food. I always enjoy that too. My friend has a dog named Pancake. And I just can't. I love it. It's so good. So we need an ancient Burmese lingam and yoni set. Do you know what? I have no idea what this means. I am going to look this up immediately. And I am ready for the results, the search results, to be extremely upsetting. But I just have to know. Okay. It looks like it's like a pedestal that is shaped like the Millennium Falcon. And there is a bullet-shaped stone sitting in a little divot. I don't know if this is meant to be like a sex toy or if it's just supposed to be decoration. Because, like, as a sex toy, it leaves something to be desired, I think. And I mean that literally and figuratively. But let's see. The lingam is typically set in the center of a pindika, also called a yoni or pithas, symbolizing Shakti. A pindika, let's see. The original meaning of lingam as sign is used in, I can't say this word. Oh, guys, I'm sorry. Like, all of this is filled with different, I think, Sanskrit words that are so many syllables long. Lingam is an outward symbol of formless reality, the symbolization of merging of the form with formless reality in transcendental context. Okay. The metaphorical creative principle, the union of feminine and masculine, the eternal cosmological process of creation, is also depicted in Chinese philosophy of yin and yang. Okay. Well, I guess it is just decoration then. I hope that you guys don't mind that I did that little aside, but I'm always like, whenever I come across something that I'm like, genuinely, I have no idea, I have to look it up as soon as I can. She says, to be safe, get 6. And they've given them a bunch of different jobs. This is all to Guillermo. And at this point, this is so pitiful. Guys, oh God. Nandor steps in because he can hear that they're just ordering Guillermo around. And he says, Nandor, Laszlo, Guillermo is my familiar. Only I can order him about. And Guillermo looks at the camera with this absolute fucking glee on his face. He is so delighted. He can't, and then he asks if Nandor needs anything. He, thanks him. And Nandor says all of the things that they just said. And absorbent towels. Lots of them. Oh, God. And then Nadja says, we must get a succulent virgin feast. And Guillermo tries to tell them that he has overfished. And as we find out later, there are some sources that he thought would be like a guarantee for virgins. And it turns out not so much. One of them is the Christian celibacy group. And he says, unfortunately, I found out that a lot of them have a different definition of being a virgin than the traditional one. Oh my God, you all, have you run into this? I have run into this so many times. This is not something that I ever believed or engaged in because it felt so absurd. It just, violating the spirit of the thing. But there are a lot of young kids out there, and probably adults for all I know, who really believe that the only thing that, losing your virginity means is P and V sex. And thus, they'll have anal sex and consider themselves to still technically be a virgin. And I knew a couple girls in high school who subscribed to this particular outlook. And even then I was just like, what? What are you kidding? I couldn't understand. You are naked with a dick in you. You're having sex. What are you talking about? But because they still hadn't had anything in their vagina, which they probably had. I bet they were using tampons. Maybe they were using sex toys. So genuinely, the seal is broken. Who cares? But that's all that they thought it meant. And it was just a workaround. And I swear to God, it is so prevalent. Because expecting people to be celibate is insane. That's not to say that people who are virgins are insane. I'm saying imposing the expectation of celibacy artificially, externally, is insane. There is no reason for that. It's just honestly so absurd that we still even have any attachment to that idea. But yeah, I appreciated this being referenced specifically, especially regarding Christian groups, because those groups are some of the horniest because they are so repressed, because it is looked on as such a taboo. It is like a fucking minefield. Oh my God. So yeah, I just thought this was really like a good note. And then Colin is talking about his participation in the orgy. I did not expect for him to be at all part of this. When we see him later, he is wearing a like Village People style, like black harness and black like leather harness and leather briefs. Essentially, it is unexpected. I was not expecting it. I thought maybe he would turn up in like a white t-shirt and boxers, like something very vanilla, plain, boring, you know, to a degree. I could see the body harness being seen as sort of vanilla by some people, but like not really. I am genuinely surprised. And he says that his concern is that people won't enjoy my room. I've never had anyone in here. I have a strobe light up, a couple speakers playing acid jazz. I have no idea what that is. What is that? I'm not going to look it up, I promise. And he's also showing off his filing cabinet, and that he always wanted one as a kid, but he was never allowed to have one. So it was one of the first things he went out and purchased when he was on his own. Yeah, that sounds right. Oh my God. Guys, this show, what are we even doing? I want to know how much of this stuff is workshopped and how much of it is him going, like sitting down with writers and being like, okay, here's what I imagine my character would do. Because he is the most boring person. His most exciting piece of furniture is his file cabinet. Does he like, you know, I always want to know when it comes to comedy, how much of it is sort of off the cuff and how much of it do they sit down and really go over? Especially because on this show, part of the charm of the humor isn't necessarily that the comedy is always surprising. Some shows, they go left at the end of every sentence. And that's what's funny, is that you think you know what the joke is going to be. And then it's not that. This show does that sometimes. But a lot of times you do sort of know what the joke is going to be. And it works anyway, because their delivery is so good. And by delivery, I don't mean like the timing is totally right. I mean, their delivery feels organic. The way that they the way that they deliver it feels genuinely like they're thinking of it in the moment, like it just occurred to them. So it feels conversational in a way a lot of other humor doesn't. Like, it will feel scripted, you know? That's one of those things that I always feel with like Whedon stuff, is that, yeah, the dialogue is funny, but it's funny in a way that doesn't feel like anybody would ever talk like that. You know, it doesn't feel like people. It feels like we're delivering very funny comedy right now. And it's a little bit unimpressive to me at times. I feel like that sort of comedy often works better on the page than it does like when you're watching it. But yeah, I just feel like so much of this show genuinely feels ad-libbed. And I don't think that much of it actually is. I think they're just really good at creating that sense in the way that they decide to speak the line. But yeah, Colin is like so excited and says, I'm really getting into it. So then we get what I think is truly the funniest part of this episode. The orgy standard of having mirrored ceilings doesn't work for vampires, so we have created our own way. Their own way. This is so good, you guys. Their own way is Guillermo gets up on a stool with a bullhorn and describes, not even a stool, he's standing on a ladder, and describes what it is that he's seeing. And he isn't ready for this, kiddos, like, at all. I thought, oh my God, Owen hasn't watched this episode yet, and I gotta rewatch it like right away with him because he will fucking die. Guillermo can't even be like, you're getting sucked off. He can't be crude enough to actually say what's happening. So he's like, it's a beautiful scene. Someone is seductively riding a candlestick up and down. Oh my God. Someone's on the couch sucking and getting sucked. And Laszlo says, louder. No. So he says that he won't be participating in the orgy because he doesn't kiss and tell. But I can tell you that I don't kiss. I am assuming Guillermo is a virgin. And they just don't need him because he's a familiar, and that's like off limits, right? But yeah, that delivery, I am just assuming that is 100% he is a virgin. And Nadja, we need specifics. What am I doing to my ass cheeks? Oh my God. Oh my God, you guys, I love this so much. She's like standing over Laszlo, miming jerking somebody off into his mouth, while Nandor tries to mimic sitting on Laszlo's lap, I guess getting ass fucked. Like, and I assume that Nandor would have to be doing all the work because Laszlo's reclining and completely incapable of like an up and down motion. And I swear to God, I don't know how they don't burst out laughing. I genuinely couldn't get through this without cracking up because it's all so chaotic. And I really enjoy how completely pansexual the show is. Like, nobody in this show is off limits to anybody else who's on this show. I will say, what I appreciate is that as much as it's probably like a go-to move for most vampire properties to have the sexy vampire woman making out with another sexy vampire woman, they do not do any of that male gazy shit for this show. And one could argue that they go man on man jokes because like of a mild homophobia, but I think it's more because it makes it so much clearer that it's like not about the men. Do you get what I mean? So I don't know. It's just really refreshing. And because of the fact that the jokes aren't, oh my God, he's having sex with a guy. The joke is how completely depraved they are no matter who is in the equation. It doesn't matter. That's like completely irrelevant. They've evolved past giving a shit about what genitals they're interacting with. As long as somebody's interacting with their genitals, they're fine. And honestly, one day I hope to be that evolved. So eventually, as this like scene begins to grow more and more explicit, I can't get over fucking Nadja. What am I doing with my ass cheeks? Guillermo climbs down from the ladder. I can't. I'm sorry. I need a second. And he, in the one-on-one, says to the camera, I was raised very Catholic. I'm not even technically their familiar. They've just been asking me to do all kinds of stuff. And we see Laszlo yelling at him about how it's not a fucking sex net. It's a sex swing, you fuck nut. That's a sex net. Oh my God. This is, can you, there's literally in the background a box with like weird illustration on it that says Testerman's sex net. Does anybody out there have a sex net? Because I would love to know how this works and what the point of it is supposed to be. Very, very curious. And so then he starts talking about how they call him Gizmo. I had forgotten that that's a thing. Gizmo, get the dildos. Gizmo, try out the dildos. Gizmo, how were the dildos? They're fine. I'm sorry. But he's so irritated about the dildos. And I can't help but be like, yeah, I could see that. Like, personally, it would be no problem. But he's obviously a little bit of a prude, bless his heart. I really want to know what would actually change for him if he were to become a vampire. Like, would he still be a prude? Because we haven't really met any vampire prudes. I would be curious about that, you know? Because, yeah, I just mildly curious about the change in attitude. Is it inevitable? I feel like it's presented as inevitable because you just live so long that you just get bored. And so you just start doing wild shit because you're just, why not? You know, I've tried everything else, so let me try this other weird fucking thing. And they're asking him whether or not he's finally gotten the virgins, and he says no, and then and Nadja says, but, you're like a non-stop butt machine. That reminds me, have you ordered the non-stop butt machine? Again, a like joke that you do kind of see coming. But she just really delivers on it, so it's fine. So Guillermo gets up and walks out, as he puts it, before I say something that I will regret, and slams the door behind him. And this is when we get Nandor going to speak to him. And this is what I mean when I say that I like Nandor the least. The other two are also very rude. But they're rude to somebody that it's not their responsibility to sort of care for and oversee. And so I can forgive it a little bit more. Also, like, Guillermo is sort of a weirdo, annoying guy. I'm not like, you know. But Nandor goes in there. And he has to know how completely Guillermo worships him. Like, he's definitely aware of it. But he doesn't, like, it doesn't matter. Not really. There's a part of him that's oddly sensitive. But it doesn't translate, you know? And he comes in, he thinks that, first of all, Guillermo's room is a closet. And Guillermo has to tell him, this is my room. I pay $1,200 a month. Guys, did any of you think that Guillermo was paying rent? It never even entered my head. I assumed part of the deal was that you at least had room and board taken care of. Where is Guillermo getting the money? Where's his income coming from? Do they pay him and then he just basically hands the money right back? Like, what? Oh my God, he's getting so screwed. I really feel for him. I really do. So Nandor says, dealing with an idiot who's complaining, you can either kill them or you can pretend to listening to them. And that's exactly what he does. He pretends. He lets Guillermo start to complain, talks right over him, and doesn't listen to anything he says, while Guillermo says that the problem he's having is that nobody listens to him. Oh, God. So we have a lot of different setup things, and this is when we get the Laszlo's sex tapes pornos. The sex tape sounds like it's like amateur stuff that was just filmed for fun. But this is stuff that was like, I'm assuming, sold in stores or played in sex theaters, whatever. And oh my God, I forgot about this guy, Constantine, who's just chilling in the corner dressed in like gimp gear. And he's got chains and everything. And he's just like hanging out over in the corner. I don't know where he came from. Is the implication supposed to be that they keep him in the attic and they just took him down for now? But regardless, he winds up being the guy that Guillermo's friend is fucking at the end of the episode. So Guillermo and Nandor go to what looks like a party city to try and stock up for things for the party. These are the moments that I live for in this show, because there is just no, like, if you were hosting an orgy, how would you decorate? It's like a genuine question. Would you? I feel like I would. Drop cloths aside, that's not going to do all that much for your decor. But you don't want people to just come into your house for an orgy and for it to just look like you're about to have your walls painted. Like, you want to create a mood, right? I think the first thing that I would probably do is like replace all the light bulbs with like red light bulbs or something. Lighting is extremely important. You don't want it to be too bright. And probably like some good speakers, because like camouflaging some sounds but making the music low enough that other sounds can be heard still would also help balance out like some of that awkwardness. Music can really help out with overall awkwardness at any like group gathering anyway. But then what else are you gonna get? Are you gonna, like, you don't want to put like fucking paper streamers up, right? Like, that's nothing. I like can't think of anything. The only thing that comes to mind is decorating like you would for like a bachelorette where everything is penis shaped, and that's not sexy, that's just goofy. So what do? I guess you could do sort of like a brothel sort of theme, like make it like a bordello-esque and have there be really heavy, like, you know, the kind of energy that they have at like, what is it? Like, what do they call it? Steampunk stripping. It's like stripping, but like fancy with costumes. Oh, burlesque. When people do burlesque, that's sort of the oftentimes the decor in the theater is something that's supposed to feel sort of like turn of the century, maybe like even 20s style, depending. That's a pretty tough thing to pull off, though. That's not decor that you can just go buy. Other than like Gatsby themed, which that's the wrong kind of 20s vibe. So nothing here is going to work. There's this, you know? So they get, first of all, there's like a chocolate fountain they're buying to put blood in. I really do like that the picture on the chocolate fountain box almost looks like there's blood in there. And Nandor is asking for all of these, like, he's asking for jade butt eggs. And he's saying it as, like the joke is supposed to be that she doesn't know what this is. But I'm like, I'm pretty sure they have those. Like, I think Goop sells them. It isn't out of the question that they'd be able to find that at some store in New York. They're just in the wrong store. It's not that the thing that he's asking for is too ridiculous. But this sales clerk who is working at the front counter just doesn't get it. It's pretty good. We do mostly like loot bags for kids. So while they're here, they run into Guillermo's friend, personal friend. And he is really uncomfortable with the idea of putting up one of his friends for sacrifice. You can tell Guillermo is like obviously willing to go and get a sacrifice, but he doesn't feel great about it. He's willing to do it, and that's part of his job. He doesn't love it. And so once we cross the line into it being somebody that he personally knows and is friends with, he can't handle it anymore. And this, like, Nandor zeroes in on him. His name is Jeremy, because he can tell the guy is probably a virgin, and zeroes in like laser focus with this fucking horniness to him that we have not seen Nandor react like this to women, but to the idea of this virgin's blood. He clearly has a complete boner. And oh my God, I love him saying it hasn't been as fun like gaming without Guillermo Goth 2020. Oh my God, I love it. Or Guillermo Goth 2000, whatever it is. So Guillermo can tell what Nandor is about to try and do, and attempts to like basically cock block. And Jeremy is so like, he's such a sweetie and he doesn't get it. Is asking like, oh, are you having a party? What are you doing? Guillermo tries to say that he has a girlfriend, and he's like, oh, that was a catfish. Of course he doesn't get it. Why would he get it? And he gets invited to the party, and he winds up actually showing up. And you like are watching that. Like, I don't know what you guys thought was going to happen. I'll be honest. I was like, are we going to watch Guillermo's friend get killed? And we watch Guillermo have a total like existential panic attack in his room. He is truly not okay. He decides in the end that he is going to bust in and try and save his friend. Like, when it comes down to it, he is willing to like kind of screw the evening up and possibly get on the shit list of all the vampires in the house by stopping them from eating his friend. But when he comes in, his friend is busy fucking the gimp. I don't know how this even happened. Like, but there it is. So he is no longer a virgin, and his blood is therefore just not interesting to anybody anymore. Which means that he can just like chill later on and play apples to apples. Honestly, the idea of them hanging out and playing apples to apples is really like, that's good shit. So this party, as it begins to really like pop off, we see, first of all, Nadja is wearing this like weird sort of, it almost looks like tinsel on her head. And it's like her hair is made into horns. It looks like her hair. It's probably just actual horns. And she has this like really cool, almost body stocking look going on. But then Laszlo comes down and he's in like a tracksuit. Well, the pants of a tracksuit anyway. And it turns out he's just refusing to come. And she can tell that this is like a bad start to things, because we know how much this like can weigh on everybody if this doesn't go well. She essentially is like, all right, fine. You know, not really, like she isn't fine with it, but we have everybody turning up and her just trying to ignore the fact that Laszlo isn't there. And we get introduced to a couple of different new characters. First of all, we have 50s guy back. That's what his name is, right? But he's got like a burn on his face. I am assuming because he was in the club fire. I can't remember where we last saw him, but I think that's what that's supposed to be. There's a dude who is not a Babadook. He is the Badabook. I love and hate this. Truly. Back and forth. Like, this is one of those where I'm like, is this really clever or so goofy? And I was like, you know what? It doesn't have to be either or. It can be both. So this is when we first see Colin in his little outfit. And also he's got like the policeman's hat on, and he's telling a story about a raccoon solving a Rubik's Cube and I guess feeding on these guys. Is Colin hoping to fuck? I'm assuming from the way he's dressed that he's hoping to fuck. But if he's trying to feed off of them, he's going to render them totally like without energy. I feel like that's just not in his best interest. Colin, what are you doing? And this is when Jeremy shows up. I brought mochi ice cream. Is there a place that I can put my backpack? I don't know why wearing a backpack is like a signal that somebody's a nerd, but it is. Like, it just, that immediately you're just like, yeah, no, I know what this means. Here comes Nandor. You guys, I thought I was ready for everything. When I said that most of this episode is not shocking, so some of the humor maybe didn't quite work on me the same way, Nandor is a definite exception. He is covered in dildos and chains. It looks like the dildos themselves are chained to his body. I swear to God, you guys, what even is this? Because when you first see him, he just like announces himself and says, I'm here. And the camera's looking at him from below and he's like on the landing. And it just looks like he has either a huge boner or he's wearing a strap on or something. And then when he turns the corner, you can see how many of them, they're even strapped to his knees. I have to note that downstairs, everybody who looks up at him and sees him, they all look a little bit put off and weirded out. They don't seem like to be thinking that this is fun or cool or anything anybody wants to interact with. And then we have Laszlo. And he comes up and tells everybody that I wasn't coming to the orgy because my heart was in pain. But I began to realize that I had to put my heavy heart to the side for the love of my good lady wife. And wants her to abandon the orgy and just come upstairs and make love with him, which is the opposite of what people are looking for in an orgy. It wouldn't be so bad if they weren't the hosts of the orgy, but they are. So this sucks. And as soon as he says this, everybody starts to be like, yeah, you know what? You fucking killed the vibe. And they all begin to leave. Nadja, of course, panics and attempts to like give everybody a reason to stay. And this is when we see she runs into the next room to try and show them Jeremy, the most gorgeous virgin blood. And when she opens the door, yeah, that's probably, honestly, considering this is like an orgy episode, the most explicit scene in the entire episode, I guess. I love the fact, too, that this orgy ends with nobody getting laid except for the virgin who should be getting eaten. And apparently just nobody, like, I don't know who breaks the seal with him, like, as a meal. Is it the hosts, or do they offer him up to guests to eat first? And yeah, like, I really would love to know how this is meant to go, ceremonially speaking. But yeah, I am also into the fact that Jeremy is out here fucking a dude, and he had been talking about like having a girlfriend or a girl being a catfish earlier. So evidently, like, the pansexuality or at least bisexuality is all over the place in this show. He's down with it. He doesn't care. He's like having such a good time. Like, he's genuinely grinning ear to ear at one point. So yeah, everybody files out, and Guillermo at the very least is relieved because of Jeremy, but he's like sitting over in the corner watching him and Colin and the Gimp playing apples to apples. And then we have Nandor leading the camera over to Nadja and Laszlo's room, because he's like, oh, I don't think that Nadja's going to let him forget about this. And he opens the door, and there's a couple of bats on the floor banging. And it had been said earlier that vampire bats are vampires who hosted bad orgies and then turned into bats and never turned back because of the shame. So it's kind of great. They both turned into bats, but they decided to fuck as bats. Truly showing that love conquers all, and one can overcome any difficulty as long as there is a boner involved. And I think that is everything that we can all hope to reach in our lives. A place that all of us can truly aspire to reach. And I'm here for it. Next episode is a finale. I have no idea what a finale looks like for a show like this. Genuinely, truly clueless. Also, I want to know what happened to Jenna. Like, what is she up to? Where is she? What's going on with her? I want more. Just saying. I'm going to ask every episode that she's not there, like, where she is. That's how that's going to go. So just be ready for that. All right, I'm going to wrap. Thank you guys again so much for listening. Thank you to Max for commissioning this. Hope you guys are enjoying it. And I'll be seeing you again soon with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.